Alright, hello students. This is Mr. Austin here. I got a new hat and let's go ahead and get into today's lesson. Alright, so in yesterday's lesson, Ms. Juhan taught you about ratios, rates, and unit rates. Well, in today's lesson, we're going to learn how do we use unit rates in the real world. Alright, so don't forget to get down your objective. Our objective is finding unit rates and comparing unit rates. Alright, Vic number 1. To find a unit rate, divide the first term by the second term and you keep 1 as your denominator. Alright, so let's look at 2 examples on how do we do that. So examples 1 and 2, it tells us to find the unit rate. So to do that, what we want to do is just follow our 2 steps. We want to divide the first term by the second term. So this would be 75 divided by 3. Well, if I do that, I will get 25. And I keep 1 as my denominator. And now I can put my units. Since the dollars came first, I would make that my top unit. And hours came second, so that will be my bottom unit. Alright, so it's just that simple. Alright, so if you earn $75 in 3 hours, that means you're earning $25 each hour. So after 2 hours, you would have $50, and then at 3 hours, you would have $75. Alright, let's look at another example. Same thing, we're finding the unit rate. Example 2, 18 pictures on 2 pages. So the unit rate should tell me how many pictures are on each page or per page. Again, to find that, we just take our first term and divide it by our second term. So this would be 18 divided by 2. All right. I would get 9. And I always keep my denominator as 1 when I'm dealing with a unit rate, because unit rate means for each unit, per unit. All right, so now I'll put my units, 18 pictures. So pictures came first. So it'll go here, and I'll just abbreviate pictures with pic. And my second unit is pages. So I'll put that as my second unit. And again, I'll just abbreviate for pages. And just making sense of this, what does this mean? Well, this means if I have 18 pictures on 2 pages, that means there are 9 pictures per page, or on each page, the unit rate. All right, let's look at Vic number 2. All right, Vic number 2 tells me when comparing rates, the first thing you want to do is change each rate into a unit rate, just like we just did on the last board. You change each rate into a unit rate. And then the second step is you compare the 2 quantities, and then you'll be able to answer your question. So let's look at example 1 for Vic number 2. Example 1 says that Colin swam 11 laps in 8 minutes. Trey swam 7 laps in 5 minutes. Which boy swam at a faster rate? Well, our first step, since we're comparing the rates between Colin and Trey, we're trying to see who was swimming the fastest. Our first step is to change each rate into a unit rate. Because here, Colin had 8 minutes to swim. Trey only had 5 minutes to swim. Well, if I make unit rates, it'll change both of these into per minute, or how many laps did they swim in 1 minute, and that way I'll be able to compare the 2. So first let's do Colin. All right, Colin here, and we'll do Trey here. All right, so Colin swam 11 laps in 8 minutes, so I'll do the first term divided by the second term. So this will be 11 divided by 8. And I know already that 8 will not go into 11 evenly, so I know I'm going to get a decimal. Well, let's go ahead and divide. 8 goes into 11 one time. 1 times 8 is 8. When I subtract, I'll get 3. All right, now I need to do my decimal. So I'll add decimal 0, and I'll keep dividing. I'll bring down my 0. Well, 8 goes into 30 3 times. 3 times 8 is 24. I would subtract. I would get 6. I'll have to add another 0 because I want to get a 0 remainder. 8 goes into 60 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. When I subtract, I will get a 4. Still have a remainder, so I need to add another 0. And here I think I'm going to get a 0 remainder here. 8 goes into 45 times. 5 times 8 is 40. When I subtract 40 from 40, I get a 0 remainder. So here is my unit rate. And I will write that as 1,375,000 laps in 1 minute. So this is how fast Colin is swimming. That's Colin's unit rate. We'll do the same thing for Trey. We'll take the first term, 7 laps. And I want to divide 7 laps by 5 minutes. 7 divided by 5. And I just divide normally. Again, I'm going to get a decimal because 5 will not go into 7 evenly. All right. So 5 goes into 7 one time. 1 times 5 is 5. When I subtract those, I'll get a 2. All right, so I have to add decimal 0. When I bring that down, I'll get a 0. Well, 5 will go into 20 4 times. Four times 5 is 20. When I subtract, I'll get 0. All right, and then I just need to bring my decimal up into my quotient. And there's Trey's unit rate. So Trey is swimming 1.4 laps in 1 minute. All right, now that I have unit rates, I can compare. Well, in 1 minute, Trey goes 1.4 laps. Colin goes 1.375 laps in 1 minute. So that means Trey travels or swims further than Colin. So Trey is swimming at the greater rate or the faster rate. All right, let's look at 2 more examples. All right, example 2, again, we're comparing the rates. 217 miles in 7 hours or 396 miles in 12 hours. Again, I'm just going to compare the rates, so I need to find the unit rates for both. Let's look at the first one. I would do 217, the first term, divided by my second term, 7. 7 goes into 21 3 times. 3 times 7 is 21. I'll subtract, I'll get 0. I'll bring down my 7. 7 will go into 7 one time. 1 times 7 is 7. I'll subtract, I get 0. So my first unit rate would be 31 over 1. Remember, my denominator is always 1 when I'm doing unit rates. And my units would be miles first, hours second. All right, now let's find the unit rate for our second rate. We'll have 396 divided by 12. All right, same thing. 12 goes into 39 3 times. 3 times 12 is 36. When I subtract, I'll get 3. I'll bring down that 6. 12 goes into 36 3 times. 3 times 12 is 36. And I get a 0. Here I didn't have any decimals. And again, my unit rate will be 33. And remember, my denominator is always 1 when I'm finding unit rates. And now I can put my units: miles and then hours. All right, so if this was 2 cars traveling at these rates, that meant that the second car was going faster. The second car was going 33 miles per hour. Our first car was only going 31 miles per hour. All right, we're going to look at one more example. And I'm sorry if this video is kind of long. But let's look at our last example. And this one is kind of tricky, so really pay attention to this problem. Which is the better buy? Getting 2 gallons of milk for $5.98 or a half of gallon for $1.69. All right, so first let's make sense of both of our rates. Let's look at our 2 gallons. If I can get 5 for $5.98, I can get 2 gallons of milk. Or for $1.69, I can get a half of gallon. Well, how would I represent a half? Using numbers, all right? Well, I can use a decimal. A half as a decimal is 0.5. So for a 0.5 or a half of a gallon, it's going to cost me $1.69. To find the unit rate now, all I got to do is divide the first term by the second term. So this would be $5.98 divided by 2. All right, and I just divide just like I would normally. 2 goes into 5 2 times. 2 times 2 is 4. And when I subtract, I'll get 1. I'll bring down my 9. 2 goes into 19 9 times. 9 times 2 is 18. When I subtract, I'll get 1. I'll bring down that 8. 2 goes into 18 9 times. 9 times 2 is 18. And I get 0 as my remainder. So here is my unit rate, which is $2.99 for 1 gallon. All right, let's do the same thing here. I'll take the $1.69 and I will divide it by 0.5. All right, if we remember back to when we were dividing decimals, I have to make my divisor into a whole number. Which means I have to swing my decimal place one place. In my divisor, I have to do the same thing in the dividend. All right, so here's my decimal. I'm gonna go ahead and put it up in my quotient. And now I can just divide like normal. 5 will go into 16 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. When I subtract, I'll get 1. I'll bring down my 9. 5 goes into 19 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. When I subtract, I'll get 4. All right. I don't want a remainder, so I'll add a 0 and keep dividing. All right. 5 goes into 40 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. When I subtract, I'll get 0. So here's my unit rate for the second price. So here it's $3.38. And remember, when I'm doing unit rate, my denominator is always 1 for 1 gallon. So now let me compare the two prices. Would I rather pay $2.99 for 1 gallon, or would I rather pay $3.38 for 1 gallon? Well, I don't know about y'all. I don't have money like that. So I'm gonna go with a cheaper price. $2.99 per gallon is the cheaper unit rate. It is the better buy. Y'all, when you come into class on Wednesday, we're going to practice doing problems like this pretty much the entire period. We'll be talking about the better buy, which one is the better deal, and we'll be finding unit rates, and you'll be doing that with your groups. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.